Have you ever felt that the spiritual path was supposed to be this constant climb, right? You're always ascending towards some distant, perfect light. Well, today, we're digging into a really powerful story from a spiritual memoir that suggests the exact opposite. We're going to take a journey not up, but down, deep into the heart of our own beautiful, messy, chaotic humanity.
And this single idea, this is the key to everything. It's suggesting that our imperfections, the wounds we try so desperately to hide or fix, they aren't actually obstacles to enlightenment. In fact, they might be the very entry points for grace, the pathways through which a deeper truth can finally get in.
And there it is, the central challenge to maybe everything we think we know about spiritual growth. So forget the mountain peak for a minute. What this story asks us to do is consider that true awakening is actually a descent into the valley of being human, into our pain, our shame, and the messy, glorious, ordinary stuff of our daily lives.
Okay, so let's explore this first big idea, the wound as a portal. Now, we're not talking about romanticizing pain here, not at all, but it is about reframing it. The argument is that our deepest wounds aren't some cosmic mistake or a sign that we failed. No, they're more like a kind of sacred map, a hidden cartography leading us back to who we really are.
And to really get this, we have to see how these wounds literally construct our entire inner reality. The author calls this the architecture of pain, a series of foundational experiences that shape what we believe, what we're afraid of, and the very way we live inside our own skin.
What's so fascinating here is how this architecture gets built, layer by layer. It starts at age 3, with this traumatic accident at a fountain that creates this profound, deep-seated guilt for something he didn't even really do. Then, at 6, a random stone hits him, leaving a physical scar. It's like a mark the universe etched right onto his soul. And by 12, these feelings of being an outcast all come to a head. He has this powerful moment where he sees the other leftovers, the other invisible ones, and suddenly, his personal pain becomes a bridge to compassion.
So this foundational pain, it creates a deep fear of just being ordinary, of not being enough. And that fear, as we're about to see, can kickstart a spiritual search that, ironically, builds its own invisible prison, the trap of needing to feel special.
And this just illustrates that paradox perfectly. The author talks about desperately seeking confirmation of these incredible past lives, going to mediums and channelers. The whole goal was to prove he was special. But the reality? It was a total trap. Every time he got some external validation, it just made his spiritual insecurity worse. It taught him to give away his own inner authority and just reinforce the very ego he was trying so hard to get beyond.
And this brings us to this crucial concept of the spiritual ego. It's basically when the ego gets a brand new, very sophisticated outfit. It trades in mundane stories like, I'm just normal, for these spiritual concepts like, oh, I'm an old soul. The story changes, but the underlying structure of separation, it's exactly the same. It's just a beautiful, gilded cage that looks a lot like freedom.
So after he confronts this cage of the spiritual ego, the author has this huge realization. His journey isn't unique at all. It's actually a single note in this vast, timeless song, a song that the book calls the continuum of light. And this is what connects the deeply personal to the truly universal. And you can see that the same pulse of love has shown up through countless faces over time. Through Arjuna, the warrior, who had to learn that real courage is compassion. Through Mirabai, whose so-called madness was really just divine clarity. It even shows up in figures like William Penn, who turned his own experience of being an outcast into a refuge for others. Every life, a different octave of the same promise, to turn pain into a mirror for the divine.
This quote from Yogananda just nails it. The divine current isn't only in saints and mystics, it's right here, in the raw, unfiltered moments of our own lives. It's not in some distant temple. It's in the most intimate spaces of our own hearts, especially, and maybe most importantly, when they're breaking.
And all of this leads to the ultimate realization in the memoir. The whole journey, it was never about escaping this world. It was about coming home to it, completely. The final awakening doesn't happen on a mountaintop. It happens on the floor of a hospital room.
This is the moment of absolute clarity. Watching his mother suffer through chemotherapy, he realizes that every step he thought he was taking up was really just bringing him back in a spiral to that foundational wound. But this time, he had new eyes to see it. The path was never an ascent. It was a descent into the very pain he'd spent his whole life trying to get away from.
What's so powerful here is how it just shatters our ideas of what's spiritual. In that hospital room, the author just erupts into laughter, this broken, involuntary release of all his trapped pain. And in that raw, obscene moment, the wall between the sacred and the mundane just collapses. The hiss of the monitor, that becomes a kind of contemplative silence. A shared look with the nurse becomes a sacred ritual. The divine is found right there, in the middle of the mess.
So why does all this matter to you? Well, the final part of this explainer turns the lens away from the author's story and points it right at our own. It's an invitation to start seeing our own scars not as flaws, but as teachers, as portals that hold the very wisdom we came here to find.
And this brings the question right to us. So I want you to think about it for a second. What pain, what imperfection, what crack have you been working so hard to seal up and hide from everybody, when maybe, just maybe, it's the very opening your soul needs?
And this takes it even deeper, reframing our biggest struggle as our highest purpose. The source suggests that our most stubborn wound isn't some cosmic mistake. It might actually be a lighthouse, a beacon meant to guide others who are lost in the same darkness. It might be the very call your soul came here to answer.
So the huge takeaway is this. Divinity isn't something that descends from the heavens to rescue us from being human. It actually rises up from within our humanity. It emerges from the most unlikely, uncomfortable, and ordinary places, from the very scars we once called shame.
And we'll end with this final, beautiful thought. The entire spiritual journey isn't about leaving this world for a better one. It's about finally, fully arriving in the life we already have, with all its cracks and shadows, and recognizing the light that was always already here.